Hi there! Welcome to Pallet University, and sort of an update to some of our earlier parts of our Giving Every Pokemon a Scientific Name series. So, I recently kickstarted the series back up after stopping sort of midway into Generation 2, and then recently I finished Generation 2 and wanted to go back through and sort of reevaluate some of the names that I have, given so far. Plus, we got a bunch of new regional variants in Generation 8 that were not accounted for when I made the series the first time. So, we're going to be going back through and sort of re-evaluating some ones that I thought might need a little fixing, plus adding in those new Galarian forms to the old forms. If you like this kind of sciencey type video, make sure to leave a thumbs up down below, as well as subscribe so you can get notified anytime we come out with some new cool Pokemon scientific content. Anywho, we're just going to go in Pokedex order. So the first one, the first Pokemon in the Pokedex to get a regional variant in Galar is Meowth. So Meowth is really cool in that it's the only Pokemon to get a regional variant in both Alola and in Galar. And so I originally gave it the scientific name Pardus elegans, which means elegant panther. But when it comes to regional variants, I give them different subspecies names. So for the Cantonian Meowth in Persian, its scientific name is Pardus elegans gracilis, which means slender or fragile. And then for the Alolan form, I gave it Pardus elegans cephalus, which means head, in reference to Alolan Persian's gigantic noggin. But when it came to Perserker, at first I was like, I didn't really know how to handle it, because I'm like, technically it's a different Pokemon, but I'm like, it's still a same, branch evolution. It is the only Pokemon that, well, I guess that's not technically true. I was going to say it was the only Pokemon that has a new evolution. It's completely separate from its old evolution, but, Yamask does that as well, which is way down the line for us to talk about. But I guess it's not the only one, but there are not many of them. So I was curious, do I still keep the same genus and species and then just give Perserker and Galarian Meowth, a subspecies name, or do I give it something totally new? And so I decided to just stick with the formula and give it a subspecies name. So for Galarian Meowth and Perserker, they have the scientific name Pardus elegans brutus, which is basically just a corruption of the word brute. I don't believe that's an actual Latin root, but they're kind of broody. I think they're based slightly on miners, but also on Vikings, both of whom tend to be a little more broody, so I think it works. Next in Pokedex order, we have Rapidash, whose original scientific name was Celerignus equus, which means fast fire horse, which makes sense. But for the Cantonian form, I decided to give them the subspecies name Celerignus equus ignis, because it's on fire, and for the Galarian forms, because they're more sort of mystical Pokemon, I give them the subspecies name Celerignus equus fibula, which means myth. Next we have Slowpoke Slobro and Slowking, whose original scientific name was Eustace augmentus, which means regrowing bulk, basically a reference to the fact that they're both very bulky Pokemon, and that they also have the ability Regenerator, which, anytime you return them to their Pokeball, they get a third of their HP back. So for the Cantonian / Jotonian, I guess, for Slowking, anyway, I give them the scientific name for their subspecies of Eustace augmentus hydrus, because they are water types, and for the Galarian forms, because they are poison type, I gave them the subspecies name Eustace augmentus fel, which means bile or poison. Next up there's Farfetchd, who has the scientific name Porus gladius, which means leek sword, which, given the context of Surfetchd now, that works even better. So for the Cantonian form, I give it the subspecies name Porus gladius volantis, which means flighted or flying, because it is a flying type and can still fly. And for the Galarian form and Surfetchd, I give them the subspecies name Porus gladius terrestris, because though they are still birds, they cannot fly. They can, at least I don't think they can. They learn a couple flying type moves, but there's no real indication that they can fly, per se, in the same sense that Cantonian Farfetchd can. Next up, there's Mime Jr, Mr. Mime, and now Mr. Rhyme. But for the original Pokemon, I gave them the scientific name Pantomimus creepiosus, which means creepy mime. Pretty self-explanatory. Mime personally creeped me the heck out, so that's kind of why I picked that. So for I'll say the original form, because Mime Jr doesn't change. So that doesn't really, I don't know which subspecies that falls into, because similarly to like Cubone is like, Cubone in Alola is the same as a Cubone from Kanto or any other region, yet they evolve differently. So like, which subspecies is Cubone? That's a completely different topic for a different video. That's not what we're talking about today. So for Cantonian Mr. Mime, its subspecies name is Pantomimus creepiosus mediocris, which means fairy. And for Galarian Mr. Mime and Mr. Rhyme, their subspecies name is Pantomimus creepiosus gelidus, which means frozen. And obviously those are references to their types, because they're both psychic type, but they switch their secondary type depending on which form it is. And so that's the last non-legendary, Galarian form or regional variant that we're talking about today. So in the last video about, the last part of the Johto Pokedex, I talk about the legendary beasts. And I actually made a mistake in that video, in that I said that I made the legendary birds all the same genus and then different species, when that's not actually true. I thought I did that, and I think I meant to do that, but I didn't. So I'm going to fix that now. And so originally their scientific name was just their name, and then their species name was Avum. So for example, Articuno was Articuno Avum. Zapdos was Zapdos Avum. Moltres Avum. But in retrospect, I think I want to sort of switch that. So that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm making them all the same genus, which is Avum, and their specific name is their name. So, for example, Articuno is now Avum Articuno, Zapdos is Avum Zapdos, and Moltres is Avum Moltres. And for them, I sort of decided to just be simple with their subspecies names, so I just added Cantonia or Galarica at the end, depending on which regional form you're looking at. So this is a relatively short sort of update video. The video coming out later this week is actually going to be talking about a cool resource that was pointed out to me in the comments of the last video, where they actually also give a scientific name for every Pokemon. I disagree with a lot of their choices, so if you want to find out why, you'll have to check out that video later this week. Make sure to follow me on Twitter as well at Pallet_U to keep up on all things Pokemon science, as well as if you feel like this content is worthy of supporting financially, we do have a Patreon page, the link to which will be down in the description. Oh yeah, and by the time you're seeing this, this is already live, but, so I'm actually doing sort of a Patreon event for the month of December. If you become a patron in the month of December, you can watch. I'm putting up an exclusive Let's Play of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky. In my opinion, probably just like generally the best Mystery Dungeon game. One of my favorite video games of all time. It's very, very close between that and the original Mystery Dungeon game. But that is going to be the entire Let's Play, about 12 total hours of content, up exclusively for patrons for the month of December. So if you just become a patron for just that month, you can watch all of it, as well as all the other patron exclusive videos that we have going on Patreon. You can just binge all of them and then cancel your subscription. All you need to do is just do it for the month, and if you feel like you want to stay, that's awesome too. A big thank you to those folks who are already patrons over on Patreon. Patty Murphy, as well as anyone else. I'm filming this roughly 2 weeks before it actually goes out. So anyone who happened to become a patron in that time, thank you. Your support's greatly appreciated. And lastly, thank you so much for watching. And as always, there's a time and place for everything.